Welcome back. This is Niaga Spotlight with me, Tamina Kausji. Now, for this week's analysis, we will actually be looking at Kerajaan Research Institute's latest study report launched just last week. Now, it is entitled Decent Shelter for the Urban Poor, a case study of Program Perumahan Rakyat, the PPR. Right, so just basically having a look at the two main objectives of the study, which are to highlight existing structural problems in the Malaysian social housing arena, together with also emphasizing the need for holistic management of the sector within the overall housing market. So it's actually very interesting because this study actually went through three different research methodologies, which was including survey on resident satisfaction with the general structure of their individual PPR units, followed by also structured interviews with residents' associations about responsibilities towards the community. And lastly, it also asked key questions to the residents on the surrounding areas of each PPR. So in the interest of being quite comprehensive, this study actually covered 5 different PPRs, 4 in Kuala Lumpur, which included the PPR Beringin, PPR Kerinci, PPR Wahyu, as well as PPR Salak Selatan, and not forgetting also PPR Jalan Sungai in Pulau Penang. So this actually gave a very interesting and quick look now at KRI survey's findings, which of course we will be discussing in further detail in just a little while. Now, the chief concern that actually KRI discovered is that PPR buildings are now increasingly obsolete, together with also having livability being on a downward spiral. This basically overall means that PPRs are fast becoming urban slums. Now, KRI has also identified 5 major issues impacting PPR livability, beginning with building standards, as well as space usage in individual PPRs, which are not to, of course, the optimal practices for the residents, the quality of PPR facilities overall, together with relocation increasing residents' eventual socioeconomic status, as well as building shortcomings to achieve private market terrace housing standards. Right, so now that we've got that out of the way and everybody has a bigger picture about what we will be discussing, I'd like to now welcome Dr. Suraya Ismail, Head of Research with Kerajaan Research Institute, joining us online to shed a little bit more light on KRI's landmark study. Thanks for being with us, Dr. Suraya. How are you this morning?
I'm good, thank you. Thank you for having me. Thank you so much.
So now, Dr. Suraya, let's start with what has caused the original intent behind PPR or social housing by the government to house the poor in better living conditions to actually morph into a different set of new problems of this poor housing for the poor, from your findings.
Thank you very much. So from our finding, we found out that basically all the PPRs are in badly condition because there is a severe lack of funding in terms of having proper scheduled maintenance and repair works. Mind you, these PPRs are about 10 years old. It shouldn't be in the condition that it is in. And it is in a dilapidated turn, and yet at the same time, there is no scheduled effort to then decrease the building decay. And originally, poorly conceived building designs and low quality construction have further exacerbated the deteriorating conditions. This is more severe because these are all high density complexes. And there's a further issue, which is when these some are for pemilikan ownership, about 20. So those who own these really dilapidated buildings will then be poor because of the house, the conditions. So it's poor housing for the poor, and they can't manage or pay for the maintenance because it is in a really bad condition. So you become even more poorer because you can't maintain such a degradable state of the buildings. Secondly, the federal government built these buildings, and yet the maintenance are being done by the local council. So this is again a structural problem because those who build are not those who maintain. So there is a mismatch of financing or alignment of managing assets properly or efficiently. So this is a real case of moral hazard. Whereby you can build quite shoddy buildings and with low construction because you don't have to maintain it. So this is a real issue in terms of aligning the incentives
to make sure that design is optimum to ensure that it can house the poor.
Dr. Soraya, I'm definitely hearing you on the lacuna that you're describing. So moving forward, though, what are KRI's three policy recommendations for fixing these structural problems, as well as definitely developing a long-term strategy for providing social housing in Malaysia?
Thank you. Thank you for asking this question. I think this constant obsession with low in terms
rectify structural problems has made us really not focusing on real structural issues of alleviating the problems of housing, even for the poor. So the focus of our today's discussion is housing for the poor. And we want, if possible, a real a shift of a paradigm in terms of the mindset of those who want to take care, or the government who wants to be the custodian of the poor, from a construction solution, meaning you cut from a construction solution that they're having now to a management responsibility. That's the overarching principle behind all of our three types of policy solution. We can no longer say that if we build 30,000 PPR, that will solve their problem. No, it is about a management responsibility, not just construction solution of units. In that sense, we believe that the overall shifting to the management responsibility means that there is a management of the PPR households itself, to create a household registry based on housing needs with eligibility criteria that extends just income criteria, because they are OKUs, disabled people. There are many households are heterogeneous, so it's not homogeneous. So you can't just say that one family with 4 has the same welfare as one family with 8 or 2. Secondly, a serious management of PPR housing units. This is an asset for the government to help the poor. So it cannot be seen as just a once you have the unit, you're fine. No, it is about contextualizing it in the spatial socio-economic condition to make sure they are accessible to the socio-economic opportunities, to then increase their mobility and have social mobility with better facilities and amenities surrounding the PPR. Now, the third one is the management of private sector housing units. Why do we say that it's not just the social sector PPR that government have to look at, but also for the private sector? Because there are from our study, there's about 26% of respondents that can move out from PPR. But when we did, as you rightly showed just now, a spatial study, 10-kilometer radius of what are the opportunities of renting or purchasing houses after they've graduated, quote-unquote graduated from PPR or social housing, the options are so limited. So without proper monitoring of the affordability issue at the private market, these people will be stuck there because you can't get out.
Yeah, absolutely. And moving along from there, and on the same vein, Dr. Soraya, so of course, clearly poverty is the main cause of this housing deprivation, and it's not really the supply of available housing. So to tighten up the entire landscape, how can government monitoring of housing affordability overall then aid at the city council level?
You see, if we don't, okay, let's look at the counterfactual. If we don't manage the affordability issue in the private sector, then PPR will not just be for the poor, but also for those who can't access or can't buy expensive homes outside of the social provisioning by the government. This will then, a worst case scenario is that you have the B40 or B20 now, and then you have even the middle class being subjected to having social housing because there's no avenue for them to then look into affordable housing outside of the social provision. So government and local and state government and local council must really look into affordability, monitoring the affordability properly with some of the tools they can use is ensuring that when a development is being done within the local locality, that a feasibility study is done, that the price ranges that's being offered from this development matches the income that of the people residing there. if you know that people can't afford, 800,000, 1 million homes, why do you build these homes? Not because it's not what people can afford. So yet when you build these sort of houses, then more people will be subjected or becomes under the provision of government housing or government-assisted housing. And we have seen this happening in many states. If you look at our report, share of households under state social and government-assisted affordable housing programs have surpassed 60% for about a majority of states. Melaka, Kuala Lumpur, Putrajaya, Pulau Pinang is about 85%. So what on earth is happening when the private sector can't even cater for 80% of people? So this is a problem.
Dr. Surai, I think you really hit the nail on the head by mentioning how it is that those who are not necessarily that low income cannot actually afford to move out of the PPRs because of the fact that perhaps there's a lack of feasibility studies overall for newer constructions. Dr. Suraya, to finish out our thoughts, how about you tell me a little bit about how PPR residents are impacted by continuing inflation in conjunction also with February's Consumer Price Index, which will be released later today by DOSM, and also looking at prices over the last quarter?
This is a very worrying phenomenon, because as it stands, when we did the study, we asked where do they shop, where do they buy their groceries. A lot of them use the informal market, the pasar malam, as well as some go for stores, but not as much. They use the shops, sundry shops that's at the bottom of the, at the basement, at the ground floor of the PPR, and some go to the wet market. So these are avenues for them to buy daily needs. With the advent of inflation, especially cost of food, I think they will very much be impacted. And I think the issue about having nutritional food for children as well as mothers is mothers who are pregnant. These are real issues that is impacting the PPR residents. And I think if the informal pasar malam, which is, it came out very strongly in our study that this is where they buy their goods. It is something that we should continue, especially now. But again, yes, food price inflation has gone up. Many things have gone up. It is bad for them.
Thank you very much. That was Dr. Suraya Ismail, Head of Research with Khazanah Research Institute, making some time for us and sharing KRI's latest insights. We go for a short break, but we'll be right back here on our Niaga Spotlight with me, Tamina Kazji. Stay tuned.